Hello, everyone. Hope everyone can hear us today. Please look back here. Hi, I'm Amy Whitaker with Roanoke County. Thank you all for joining us today. I know this new technology is kind of the new normal for everybody now, and it's a good way to be able to connect. So we're still learning all about the technology, but we're glad that we're able to see everybody here. So I'm going to introduce folks. Over here is David Radford, who's our board chairman. And then Dan O'Donnell right here is our county administrator. And then we have Chief of Fire and Rescue, Steve Simon, and then Chief Howard Hall, Chief of Police. So glad everyone's here. And I'm going to, I believe everyone can go ahead and chat. You'll be able to chat directly to me when it's time. And after the gentlemen are done speaking, then I'll receive your questions and then we'll throw it out to them. So I'm going to turn it over to Chairman.
Thank you, Amy. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on this virtual press conference. From day one, the top priority of the Board of Supervisors and the county administration has been the safety and well-being of our community and employees. These are unprecedented times that require all of us working together during this public health emergency. Chief Simon and his staff immediately put into place our emergency operations plan to provide guidance and direction to our 1,000 plus employees. Our leaders have been in regular conversation and coordination with the Virginia Department of Health and our regional government leaders, all with the intention to protect our communities as best we can. Mr. O'Donnell is going to talk about the county services and operations. I can't say enough how impressed I am to hear about the flexibility of our staff during this extraordinary time. They have found creative solutions to maintain service deliveries to our citizens, and many employees are working from home. In regards to our budget, we, like every local government, are looking at future impacts following this pandemic. Staff has already provided the board with a preliminary revenue estimate for this year, and we held a work session to review those estimates. Our staff is now working diligently to identify areas in next year's budget where adjustments can be and must be made. Recently, our board adopted a new ordinance that allows meetings to be held virtually for the next 60 days if needed. If this occurs, we will provide details about how citizens can still take part in those meetings. Everyone is aware of the order issued by the governor earlier this week. Mr. O'Donnell and the chiefs will address the specifics of that. I would urge people to adhere to those mandates and stay at home. It's the best way. It's the most responsible way for us to stop the spread of the virus, and, as we've heard, flatten the curve. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to County Administrator Dan O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Radford. What I'd like to do is talk about kind of two phases that we've been going through. First is the phase prior to Executive Order 55 a couple of days ago, where we are really trying to have a continuity of service plan that is put in place. A lot of our employees are telecommuting, working from home. We have very few office staff in the offices, and everybody's adapting to a new way of doing business. And as Mr. Radford said, I just want to take my hat off to the county staff that has found a variety of creative solutions to continuing to provide at least some level of service. All of our buildings are closed. We are providing services by phone, email, online, or by appointment only. And over the last 2 days, we really need to stress all of the online and telephone options are what people should be pursuing. Coming to any county facility should be an absolute last resort for anything that is really of an emergent nature. So please call before you come, and you can find out where all of those numbers are available on the county website. If you go to the county website and click on the coronavirus button, then there is a modified services webpage that is a link there, and you can find the phone numbers for all of the county services. Just some of the creative things that we have done. Once again, we'll be using a lot of these face-to-face things a lot less, since 2 days ago. But some of the creative things, staff erected the tent in front of the administration center so those seeking permits and other transactions could meet safely with an employee outside to conduct business with offices that are in the county administration center. That's been very helpful for people that need building permits and plan reviews and those kinds of things. Our treasurer's office is doing business from a drive-through window at the South County Library. Once again, please call before you just go to the South County Library, see if there's something you can do online. And one of the most, I think, creative departments are our libraries. They've found ways to interact with patrons through social media. We have ebooks and audiobooks available. Children can tune in for story time, and there are activities they can do at home that they can get through the libraries. There's a program we're just starting called New Today that is for patrons who are isolated and need to hear a voice. Really want to talk to somebody. They can call through that program and just have a conversation for whatever they need to have a conversation with library staff. We're already receiving calls from people that want to access the library, but now we'll have a more structured way to do that. We've also worked with our school system to make Wi-Fi access available for the people who don't have Wi-Fi at home, and that's only available in the parking lots at schools and county buildings. Please come in very small groups, maybe one person at a time, but if you really need access to Wi-Fi, you can do that. And once again, stay in your vehicles and keep your social distances if you want to take advantage of that. And our Parks and Rec staff are offering a new series of fitness videos and developing a nature education channel. So we are trying to continue a lot of services, and they've done that very creatively. And we've had a very positive reaction from the public. So we appreciate the public understanding why we had to close our buildings and how they can still stay contacted to the county for their business purposes. So with that, 2 days ago, we had the Executive Order 55, which does have an impact on our services. And I'll talk a little bit now about how that specifically impacts that. And the primary way that we are impacted is through our park services. We've closed down the campground at Explore Park, and we will have limited reservations for Don's Cabins, which are the yurts and cabins, to stays that are 14 days or longer. That complies with the governor's order. We are also taking some very serious steps to prevent groups of 10 or more from using sports facilities, and we're removing equipment such as goals and nets, basketball hoops, bases from the baseball fields, and we're going to maintain our fields at about 5 inches of grass height to really discourage people from trying to play group sports. There's no way to play group sports and keep your social distancing, and contact is very much prohibited. So we really need to encourage people not to try to use group sports activities, especially on the county facilities. We are placing signs at playgrounds stating that they are closed to the public. The virus can survive for several hours on many different types of surfaces, even playground equipment. It is also impossible to practice social distancing on a playground. So we're essentially closing the playground portions of our parks. Our parks, trails, and passive recreation services or spaces will remain open, as will our restrooms at our regional parks. Once again, it is of utmost importance to maintain proper social distancing. We have not seen a high volume on our greenways and trails, but we'll be monitoring them and encourage people to follow social distancing requirements to prevent closures in the future. While our outdoor amenities are part of what makes the community so desirable, we really need to all do our part to prevent the virus. We have over 30 parks in the county. We encourage people to review the various parks options on the Parks and Recreation website and try to use some more rural parks versus going to the core parks to spread population out. While greenways remain open, please go individually or in very small groups of 1 or 2. Also consider varying the time of day you exercise at a park or greenway. We will have some county staff out this weekend that will be monitoring the activities at the parks to make sure that people are doing what we need to do to all stay safe in this public health emergency. And I really just hope people can comply with that. We we think we can, and we think you can. So additional guidance about all of our services is on our website. There's this button right at the front page. It's RoanokeCountyVA.gov/coronavirus that leads you to just about everything we could do. So we really urge compassion for your neighbors and common sense to be your approach to making this public health emergency survivable for all of us. Stay out of groups, practice social distancing, and stay home unless you absolutely need to go out. So that's really our major changes are going to be the Parks and Rec restrictions, and we'll see how that goes over the next couple of weeks, and hopefully it'll still give people the ability to get out and get some fresh air and maintain their social distance and health and safety. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Howard Hall to talk about how the police are operating and how they will deal with enforcement of the executive order.
Sure. Let me start by saying that I really couldn't be prouder of the first responders throughout the Valley, particularly the men and women of the Roanoke County Police Department who continue every day to come in and do their work, which is really, for the most part, unchanged. Obviously, we're not in a position of being able to work at home, and our mission puts us in contact with people very, very frequently. So in general, the operations of the police department has not changed significantly. The things that citizens will notice, which I think is very consistent with what other jurisdictions have done, our call takers in emergency communications are asking additional questions when people call around health situations so we can be aware if there are any risks. We're handling incidents when it's appropriate by phone to limit contact a little bit that way. And in some cases, we're asking people to come outside of their residence or wherever they are so that we can interact with them in an open environment as opposed to inside of a structure. We continue to carry out our responsibilities in terms of responding to calls for service, investigating crime, and enforcing both criminal and traffic laws around the county. So far, that workload has remained relatively steady. We have not, at this point, noticed significant increases or decreases in either our calls for service or criminal offenses. We certainly appreciate the support that we've received from our citizens and the cooperation that they've shown as we've made some changes in the way that we approach them. I do have to say, however, that our officers have encountered a few people who believe that the pandemic means that they won't be stopped or that we won't conduct enforcement activities. That's simply not the case. We continue to enforce criminal and traffic laws around the county, and we'll keep doing that. So we urge people to behave safely in all aspects of their activities as we continue to keep Roanoke County safe as we possibly can. In terms of the executive orders, our approach is to encourage compliance in the interest of everyone's safety. For the most part, a lot of the orders are kind of self-enforcing. The businesses that are restricted are closed, so people can't go to them anyway. Mr. O'Donnell just described some of the steps being taken in parks to try to prevent people from congregating inappropriately in those areas. However, the activities that are needed for most people in their daily lives are available. It's certainly okay to go to the grocery store, to the doctor, people that have to go to work, volunteer activities, taking care of family members, things of that nature are certainly permitted. The observations so far are that compliance around the county seems to be pretty good. There's obviously traffic on the roadways and people out and about, but we have not noticed significant issues in terms of congregating or crowding. There have been a few complaints that we've received. In those cases, we have spoken with the people involved and have been able to achieve compliance. We will continue to respond to handle flagrant violations of the orders. As always, our citizens should follow the instructions of officers on scene in terms of what they should and shouldn't be doing. It's not our intention to place criminal charges unless that is absolutely necessary. There are a lot of questions that we have fielded over the past few days about what can and can't be done. It's simply not possible for us to give legal advice. I would suggest that the Virginia State website has the order itself, as well as frequently asked questions that help to explain some of the things that you can and can't do during this. I did want to cover one topic in particular around this. There are a few things that the order doesn't do, and there's been some rumors out there to the contrary. It does not require an individual to carry documentation related to their purpose for traveling. There are no essential employee cards. There are no travel authorization documents that people were required to carry. The order does not close Virginia's interstates or roadways. It doesn't restrict either residents or non-residents from traveling throughout the Commonwealth, and it doesn't prevent our citizens from traveling out of state. However, if you're going out of state, you obviously need to be mindful of whatever restrictions might be in place in those jurisdictions. So police officers will not be conducting random stops to verify the purposes of travel. Our traffic stops will be handled in a normal manner based on reasonable grounds that some sort of violation has taken place, and we'll be asking, as usual, for driver's license registration and insurance information. So hopefully any confusion about that can be cleared up quickly. And we're going to turn it over to Chief Simon at this point.
Thank you, Chief Hall. I'm going to talk about two different things, one from fire rescue operations, and the second component will be about the emergency management situation that we're dealing with. Fire rescue and myself are active in both sides of that. Just from an operational standpoint, ironically, our call volume has not gone up, which is very fortunate. The number of calls that we are receiving are our typical calls. We have not seen any type of spike increase in calls due to this pandemic. Actually, over the last 2 weeks, our call volume has been down slightly because probably most people do not want to access an emergency room unless they are truly do need that service. Our county implemented, as Chairman Radford mentioned, our emergency operation plan. We implemented that very early into the process. We did that to create streamlined decision-making and implementation of plans to ensure continuity of government services. Mr. O'Donnell mentioned some of those services that were part of our emergency operation plan of moving services outside of the county administration building into maybe the library where we have a drive-through window for our treasurers. Those type of actions have all taken place because we have a great team in place from a planning standpoint. We're always looking at what do we need to do to continue our services, to provide that high quality level of service to our citizens while keeping our employees and our citizens safe at the same time. The county's emergency management team is in constant contact with the Virginia Department of Health and the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. The Virginia Department of Health is the lead agency from a state standpoint. However, we work very closely with the Department of Emergency Management. What we're trying to do there is go ahead and communicate with them, get the latest information, help us provide any resources from a logistical standpoint that we might need, sort of sending that up to the state level and ultimately to the federal level if and when we do need those resources. We are constantly communicating with our local governments. We do that twice a week in a formal setting where our county administrator communicates on a conference call with the city managers of Salem and Roanoke City, along with the county administrator from Botetourt and the town manager from Benton. We do that regularly just to make sure we're all on the same page and we're all working together as a region, which I think goes not just from this pandemic, but it started many, many years ago, and we honed that process, so we're working very effectively together. We also are in constant contact with our 3 hospital systems, Carilion Clinic, HCA Lewis Gale, and the Veterans Administration Hospital. So we work with them hand in hand on these issues so we can be prepared, because when we start to have an increase in calls, they will typically have an increase in patient load. We do have challenges that we'll face in an emergency management team. That includes the fire rescue, the police, the sheriff, our 911 center, but also all the other departments in the county and constitutional officers. We have 27 agencies that include those constitutional officers and departments and some partner agencies that we work hand in hand with. And we do all that to coordinate so we all have an effective response. What we do not want to do is a redundancy of services. So we're working very hand in hand. On a final note, I would like to thank all the fire rescue employees. They're doing an outstanding job. They're on the front lines, just like our police officers. But also I'd like to thank all of our county employees, all of our constitutional officers. This county is well prepared for this emergency as best we can be prepared. Hopefully it will not get worse in Roanoke County or in the Roanoke Valley, but if it does, I feel very confident that we are here to respond appropriately. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Amy. I think she might have some of your questions and she can filter them out. Thank you.
Yes, this is Amy. I just sent out a chat to everyone. If you do have a question, please chat it to me and we'll have our folks here to answer it. But just a minute here.
While we're waiting on the question to come in, I would like just very strongly to suggest that our citizens and look at our county website. There's a tremendous amount of information out there. County Administrator O'Donnell mentioned that, but we also are linked in with the health department. You can go to that website and see pretty much everything that's going on from a state standpoint and all your links, especially reaching out to the Virginia Department of Health and the CDC on recommendations on how to protect you and your family.
Okay, thank you, Chief Simon. I do have a question here from WFXR. How big of a hit do you expect in terms of revenue, and how could this impact county services down the road?
Okay. Yeah, we are beginning to unravel that. The current fiscal year, we are not actively cutting the budget per se. We have had a very good 9 months of revenue up until when the crisis hit. So our revenues were actually ahead of projections, but what we've done rather is really put the brakes on spending. We have a hiring freeze, we have a salary freeze, we are reviewing all of the capital expenditures and cutting where we can, delaying where we can, and we've asked all of the departments to only make purchases that are absolutely vital for their operations. So really the spending brakes have been put on. For next fiscal year, it's a little more complicated. Right before the disaster occurred, we had done a preliminary budget presentation to the county board that had about a 3% increase from the current fiscal year. That was about a $6 million increase for us. We have taken that back, and now we, as Mr. Radford said, we presented some preliminary budget information. And what it looks like now is we're probably going to have to cut the budget about the same 3% instead of increasing it 3%. So that's roughly in the $4 to $5 million range, we think. But it's still too early to tell because we have two things we're waiting on. One is what the state is going to do. And their special session, I believe, is April 22nd. So they will probably be revising the state budget. We do get significant revenues from the state. And then the other unknown is really the impact of the stimulus. We're not sure if there's any dollars involved in supplanting lost revenue. I'm hearing probably not, but just more for direct costs to address the public health emergency. But we really need to wait and see. In terms of timing, we revised our budget calendar so that I will send a proposed new budget to the board on May 12th, and it will be on the board's agenda for final adoption on June 23rd. So that we pushed back our budget calendar about 6 weeks.
Okay. We have another question from the Roanoke Times. Let me just remind everybody that there is a chat button at the bottom. You should be seeing me chatting to everyone on the call, but you can chat back to me to ask your questions. So from the Roanoke Times, how did the county make the decision to keep the greenways open? Is it just based on the usage you have seen in the last few weeks?
You want to address that?
Yeah, I can address that. We worked with Parks and Rec Director, and during that, we looked at what our usage would be. We feel that those passive type and social distancing that our citizens can do, and based on the recommendations of our internal staff, we felt it would be appropriate to leave our greenways open. Our parks, we have many parks, as Mr. O'Donnell mentioned. We would hope that our citizens would go ahead and do the social distancing. Our information that we have is on our county website that talks about all of those and a frequently asked question. But at this time, we felt that it would be okay to leave the greenways open. And we have two greenways primarily, but we do have a great deal of open space in parks. And we'll be leaving those open areas open, but that's to follow the strict social distancing and it's a more of a passive approach to the parks.
And another point is most of our greenways are in parks that have open spaces next to them. It's not a linear or along the river necessarily, such as Roanoke City. So we have more space around our greenways should more people come out. So I think that was part of the decision too.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions? Want to make sure everybody knows, if you haven't used Zoom before, there is that chat feature at the bottom that you can ask. I'm not seeing anything right now. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions from folks. We certainly appreciate all of our leaders here talking today about how the county will move forward, as well as updates to what we have been doing. Now that we're at the end of this, after we end the meeting, there will be a link that's generated to a file. I will send that link out to everyone. We'll also post this on our website as well as our Facebook page, just to ensure that you do have further access to it. So thank you all for joining us today.